Hi everyone, and welcome to this new video which is about the splint. Today we are going to see how the splint can be transformed into a bed and how this can help us to get rid of the most tenacious aspects of finger osteoarthritis. So what is really difficult and why? Time for more detailed explanations. There are three major difficulties. One, the size of the humps. We'll see why small humps are actually much harder to get rid of. Two, the finger affected, deformed or other fingers, and we'll see why the deformed fingers are harder to treat. And three, the side on the finger. This is related to the previous because a deformed finger has a fragile side. But first, a reminder of the preconditions that must be fulfilled. In the absence of nice summer weather, you will have to create a hot environment yourself, as you will have to reach exhalation. This implies, therefore, to bear heat, and what goes often hand in hand with it, a somewhat moist layer on the body, because it is the whole body that is engaged in the effort to heal the finger. I insist upon this because there are quite a lot of people who don't like exhalation, who don't like to sweat, and this can of course not be the case for somebody trying to treat osteoarthritis. At the end of the video, I'll give 2 tips to reach exhalation. The other precondition is to not exaggerate with saturated fats and to avoid as much as possible all the sweets containing them. Let's get started with the first difficulty, the size of the bumps. One might be tempted to think big humps are harder to treat, be it Haberden or Bouchard. But it's just the opposite. We've seen the bulk of my humps have left quite easily, and it is what remains of them, the little bits that are tenacious. There are 2 explanations for this. One, the bumps are in the way of the exercises, actually. And 2, big bumps can be better targeted with the poultice. As soon as we do exercises and the slightest movement, the bump is in the way. They are jolted, they are put under pressure, shortly they are solicited and asked to leave, and increasingly so by the repetitive exercises. While small humps, they do not hinder the movements anymore, and exercises are to no avail anymore. So it is easy to understand the importance of the exercises, and in this respect, the play of the fingers on a guitar are quite unique. They make the difference, when they do the splits, some sort of. The most remote corners are reached and cleaned this way. The other explanation is the big humps can be better targeted with the poultice, and better targeted means they can be better tightened, and this in turn means more heat, more exhalation, and the blood will be better able to do its job, because it goes always to the hottest spot. So we've seen this with Kneipp. We've seen he advises to put a band around the poultice, and it is for this simple reason. So the central idea of Kneipp always comes back as explanation. It is true even here on the level of the finger, in a small area of barely 1 centimeter. So the first conclusion to remember is the smaller the bumps, the harder to treat. Because when everything is already even, the exercises are to no avail anymore, and it is harder to target. We will now take a look at the second and third difficulties. They are related. So the deformed finger is harder to treat than the others because it has a fragile side. Fragile side because of the deformation. This side is hard to access because if we do, like with the poultice, if we put the weight of a poultice on it, it entails a risk to deform the finger even further. I've drawn attention to this for the first time in video 8 when I was treating the right middle finger. As it was pulling and leaning towards the little finger, I had to wrap always in one and the same direction, the opposite direction, as to try to straighten the finger. Otherwise, the risk was real to deform the finger further. So what makes it even more difficult is the finger can't be pushed into the cushion, or the side of the finger can't be pushed into the cushion. Normally we would push the hands this way near to the body into the cushion, simply because it's comfortable. So the lower sides are privileged. They can be better targeted, which means better tightened, more heat, more exhalation and so on. If you were to put the hands this way, cramps would begin very soon, and the risk would again be real to deform the fingers further. So the second conclusion is deformed fingers are harder to treat because they must always be wrapped in one and the same direction, and regardless of the progress already made, which means that the fragile side of the deformed finger marks a limit for the treatment with the poultice. So this is very important to remember. And that's where the splint steps in. How can it help? First of all, it is better to put a splint than nothing at all. It supports the finger. It prevents wrong movements that can aggravate the situation. It brings heat, it absorbs, it is an even and uniform coverage. But above all, it offers a solution to the three difficulties because it lets you access all of the inaccessible spots once transformed into a bed. And we see this in a moment. First, I'm going to show how it can be used a similar way as a poultice. The technique is similar as that explained in video 8. It consists of putting the splint this way around the sides of the finger, tighten in the elastic and turn in the opposite direction of the deformation, and as we progress we turn further and further until we reach the limit. Because you know, these bumps do not come from nowhere. They are often the result of repetitive movements. I see it with this finger. It is sensitive, it hurts, and I spend a month trying to get rid of the pain, and that's how I invented the bed. There is no miracle solution for the pain. Whatever I do, I did because it's better now, the pain has gone. Taking a towel, a cup, peeling potatoes, all of these movements push the finger into the deformation, which means into the pain, because that is what ultimately causes the pain. Here we are now taking a look at the transformation of the splint into a bed. It's very easy to do. You turn the splint inside out. In other words, it can be done simply by putting the strips such that the inside is outside. The strip above serves as a bed and one below as the spring. You can then put your finger as in a bed. Everything that is at rest will heal better. If you don't have, if there is no sponge anymore, you can add your own sponge. The goal is twofold. It lets you put all of the weight of the poultice on the otherwise inaccessible side, and it lets you rub in any direction, even in the otherwise forbidden direction. Well, I'm going to do a demo. So we put the finger on the splint. We rub the poultice. I would not use paper, but if you want to, you can use some gauze compress. We put the stocking around the finger, and then before we close, we check through the opening in front whether the finger is in place. We close the stocking, we close with an elastic. We put it in the glove and under the arm, and the finger won't deform anymore this way. I must confess, from the very first application I got a huge relief on the level of the pain. So that's the idea I'm exploring for the moment with the left middle finger. The first tests are encouraging, and I hope to be able to show more good results in the next or in some of my next videos. And finally, 2 tips to reach exhalation. The first is to drink regularly. For instance, every half hour, but just a mouthful, not more. You know the best drinks, linden or oat straw, hot or cold, whatever you like. The second tip is to put on the heat, also regularly, also for a few minutes. It is when you switch off the heat that exhalation will begin. This can be repeated all day long. You won't feel any inconvenience. Well, and that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening, and till the next video. Bye bye.